Please give a warm welcome to James Ivory. Hello, everybody. When I introduced the film, I said that it was your film. I misspoke because this is a Merchant Ivory film, and there are three people responsible for this film. When you and Ishmael and Ruth first made a film, the Householder, was it in your mind then that you were going to become a team that would work for 30 years? Something that's quite unprecedented, a director, a writer, and a producer working together for 30 years. Was that something that just sort of evolved, or was it something that you decided?
No, you don't decide those things, I think. No, we just like being together and working together. And we wanted to make films, and Ruth was willing to write our screenplays, most of them, and we just enjoyed what we were doing, but there was no plan, and we were damn lucky to have been able to carry on in those days, because we didn't always have much money to make the films with, and it was hard to find very hard sometimes to find people who would put money into the films that we wanted to do.
But I just wonder if people realize how special it is and how unprecedented in cinema it is for three people to work that closely over such a long time.
Now I see that, but it didn't. I don't know. It didn't occur to me or us at that time in that way, really.
The Shakespeare Wallah has so much going on in it. It's so complex and layered that I almost don't know where to begin. So I'll begin by saying, what was the inspiration for the film?
Well, the inspiration for the film was partly the Kindle family, which is the father and the mother, the daughter, Felicity, and the other daughter, Jennifer, who was married to Shashi Kapoor. And there had been, there was a troupe that went around India in the middle 40s, at about the time that India was about to become independent and its own country. And they were doing Shakespeare, going around all over India and touring. And because we had made The Householder starring Shashi, we met his family and discovered all this, and it just seemed like an interesting idea for a film. To Ruth, it was something else. This is really a film about the English leaving India. That's what it's really about. And so Ruth saw in that its value as a theme. She wasn't all that interested in a troupe of Shakespearean actors going around India just as such. It was the larger meaning of the story, because gradually things English were being pushed out, and the English were being pushed out in the way, just that all the many ways that you saw in the film. They were leaving, and there were many, many, many English people in India who had been born there and had lived there all their lives, and India was their home and their country, and all these people were leaving and giving up, and so that was what it was of interest to. It was the historic meaning for Ruth that was interesting.
I've read that some of the members of the troupe were the real people. They were essentially playing themselves. Is that correct?
Not really, no. In fact, when they read the script, the mother and the father were horrified, because the script was against everything that they believed in a way, to them, their lives in India all those years have been a triumph, and our script seemed to say it wasn't a triumph, and it was a failure.
Well,
So obviously we didn't have to really convince them all that much, but they were horrified at first. Yeah, it was not an idea. They didn't rush forward and say, "Oh, fabulous, we love this." It wasn't like that.
well, it's a lot of these things are ambiguous in the film. You can say that they're defeated, that it's a failure, but there's something heroic in the way they keep going.
Of course.
Something admirable.
Yeah, of course, yes, naturally.
Felicity Kendall, this was her first film. Did you essentially discover her?
Well,
She plays the daughter.
she did move to England and found an English husband, but also found a very, very successful English career. She became a very well-known, sought-after young English actress.
Yeah, growing up in England, I remember her on British television in the 70s.
She was on
quite
TV
a
a
lot.
lot, and she was on the stage a lot, and yeah.
But you basically discovered her.
Well, in that sense, yes. Well, we brought her to England, and it kind of blossomed there.
I think this might have been the first time that a Western audience perhaps had seen the kind of more modern India of movie stars and listening to cricket on the radio, and even this moment early on in the film where the music sort of goes into a Beatles song while they're on the train. I think it's the Beatles. This kind of this emerging India seems to be something that's very moving to watch in a film, and maybe this was the first film to really capture that. Do you think so?
It may well have been. Yes, I think it was, probably. And it wasn't something we were working at. That was just what was around. I mean, we didn't go put those things in, you know, to make a point of that sort.
So you, for the second time, you worked with, got help from Satyajit Ray. You used his great cameraman again, and Ray did the music score.
Ray did the music, yes.
So he was obviously very in favor of what you were doing.
Right.
Can you talk about your
Sure.
your relationship to Ray? I mean,
Sure.
did you ever see him making films yourself?
Oh, I did it. The first movie set I ever went on, where they were actually filming, you know, truly working on a set, was Ray's. You would think that someone who went to the USC Film School in the 1950s would have been out in the studios all the time. We never once, while I was at USC for 3 years, or more than 3 years, never once went to a studio. So I never got on a set until I went to a set of the short film called The Postmaster, which was part of Three Daughters, later Two Daughters. And I saw what went on, sort of. I mean, I saw Ray muttering to his actors, and I didn't know what he was saying because they were speaking in Bengali, but the atmosphere of the set. And then I remember one thing also about that. At the end of the day, when he'd finished and the light wasn't good anymore, and the day was over, and it was time to wrap. And I had gone out there in his car with him, and he was leaving, ready to go back to Calcutta, and take me with him. And I thought, but how can he just leave like that? There, all these people, 50, 60 people, doing all this work and putting things into boxes and wrapping things up and all the rest of it. He turned his back on it, and got in the car and left, as you do. Which seemed horrifying to me in a way at the moment. But that is what you do. When it's wrapped, the director gets out of there fast. Which I did every time on my own. Every film.
So that was one important lesson you learned from him.
was one of the things that I learned from Ray. Yeah.
do any other things come to mind that you learned
Oh,
from him?
many things, and I feel that the way that I work with actors really comes from very much from Ray. I mean, I very strongly believe that if you're going to surround yourself with artists to make your film, and whatever they happen to be doing, whether they're actors or whether it's the set designer or whether it's a composer or of course the writer, you have to allow them to do or be what they are. And if you don't like something or it seems wrong to you, then you straighten it out. You have a little conversation or something. But on the whole, you have to respect them and let them show you first what it is they want to do, what they have found in whatever they've been asked to do. They have to be allowed to do their own art. And I've always believed in that where it comes to the actors as well. Now, you're going to get situations sometimes when an actor is not doing what you want, and then you have to straighten them out. And you do straighten them out, because on the whole, actors are very, very insecure.
You gotta say.
And if you're a film director, you have to be very, very secure and stick to what you want. So, and I think that I've always worked like that. I've always, because the actor takes the part and thinks it out, and they may have had all sorts of experience of their own in their own lives that has given them something to help them with a particular role that they're now playing. You have to let them develop it and bring it out. And then if you don't like it, or if there's something wrong, or it's not right about it, you fix it, or you have a little talk. So that's the way I work, and I've always worked like that, and it's but many actors say, "Oh, Jim doesn't tell me anything. I just do what I want," and so forth. He never says a word. Well, it's true, and yet it's not true, because I'm certainly watching everything that they do very, very closely, and if I don't happen to like it, then I do say something. But on the whole, I wait for them to show me their art. Otherwise, why hire them?
Just one last question. It might be a long answer, but there are a number of points in the film where there is, I guess, Hindi dialogue and Sanskrit poem,
A tiny little.
and also there's a little kind of performance that the deaf-mute servant does for the enjoyment of the couple. None of those things are subtitled, and was that something that you very firmly didn't want to do?
Well, we because there were small bits, and if it had been something meaningful for the story, if it had been something that moved the story along, or if it was information that you had to have to understand the story, then we would have. But those little bits and pieces were just decorations, really, and so we didn't want to clutter it up with.
But you knew what they were saying.
Often not. I still don't. I listen very carefully. Well, by now I know a lot of Hindi words and Urdu words, and I kind of get the drift of things sometimes. But no, I plenty of what I heard tonight, I don't know what they were saying.
Okay, let's get some questions from the audience. Yes.
Hi, it's really a privilege to be here talking with you. My question was about working with Shashi Kapoor, because he's been a song and dance man during that time, and here he's sort of like different, and it's just like a very different actor I saw today. So how was your process working with him?
Well, the same. I mean, but he had married into an English acting family, and he had gone around. He was part of that troupe of actors, though as a very young man, part of that troupe going around called Shakespeare Wallah, and he just had a different sort of mentality about the whole thing, he wasn't like his famous brothers, Raj and Shami. He had quite a different idea about what he wanted to do. And, we saw eye to eye and most everything, really. I mean, we never had a fight, ever.
But he must have been eager to take on a role like this.
Well,
that
he
had
was.
so much substance.
Sure, he was. But he starred in, well, our three out of the four Indian features that we made when we were first in India, he was the star. In one he plays a movie star, and here he's a playboy, and in The Householder he's a young struggling college professor. And he was suitable for all these different roles.
Other questions? Yes.
Did you think about length as you made the film?
Question was, did he think about length while he was making the film?
Did I think about length?
Yes. As the creator of the film.
Well, I certainly had to think about it in the editing room when I had like 3 hours of film. We obviously knew that you couldn't have very, very long films, and we knew that.
Are you saying it was too long or not long enough?
No, it's quite long enough. I think.
No, I meant the gentleman in the audience.
Oh.
Well, I'm asking the questions, not answering them.
Touche.
No, I thought it was the length it ought to be, but later on, when I saw the film many, many times, and then I started making other films and other kinds of films in other countries, I thought, well, probably I could take 10 minutes out of that film and nobody'd ever even know it. And I was tempted to do that, and then I spoke of it to the others, but they said, look, you have other things to do.
Yes. No, sorry, I was pointing at this guy, but you'll be next.
Hi, I second this gentleman here who said it's really a privilege being here. My question is, when was the last time you yourself saw the film, and how did you feel just now watching it?
I felt very happy to see it. I love seeing my films on a big screen. That's why I occasionally, in these events, I sit through the film, because you don't get to, after a while, you don't get to see your films on a great big screen anymore. I mean, if you want to see them, and they're always interesting to watch. I see a million things I don't like, and I wish they weren't. Like, for example, it seems to me, and it was even more noticeable to me tonight, that there was, every time there was a quiet moment, I have filled that up with some kind of ethnic busyness. A song was going on, or some people hauling something, or something was making a noise at a moment which could really just a bit quiet. And that, that irritates me, and things like that. A lot of the film was out of sync, as you probably noticed. I mean, the dubbing is off, and we just had to live with it. And nobody seems to complain too much, but I know when something's off. I mean, I can see it. I know that it's either been added, we had to add something that we needed, some sentence or word that we needed, but the lips are not saying that word. I know I see those things. But what can you do? When was this made? 1965? Many of you.
Made in 64, probably.
Many of you were in grade school then, so it was a long, long time ago.
Yes, you had a question.
Yes, just a quick question. How did you work the Mater Joffrey piece into it? Was that true? Was there really another woman? And the other is, how did you and Ishmael Merchant work this out together?
Well, wait a minute. I don't quite get your question.
Oh, the Mater Joffrey, when she came in as the mistress.
Yeah.
Was that a true story that happened?
No. When we had a story, when Ruth had sort of come up with an idea and a sort of a framework of a story, and then there was going to be, I liked the idea of having a movie actress, and I knew Madhur very well. I liked her very much, And she was always, from the very beginning, to have been part of this. She was always part of this film. So she became a movie star in it, and we worked very well. But she was a disappointment to the most of the Indian crew, because she's physically she's anything but a modern Indian film actress. I mean, she's slim and trim and small and demure and cultured and she's anything. So they all, what is this? When she came on the set the first day, and they all knew she was going to play this movie star. Most of the crew didn't know her, because she'd never really acted very much in any sort of big way in India, and they didn't know who she was. And then they saw her; she was going to play this rambunctious Indian movie star. They were disappointed; their faces fell.
More questions? Yes.
You mentioned just now that when you went into the editing room, you had a lot more film that you ended up with in your final product. Can you tell me what kind of stuff you left there, what you jettisoned from the movie?
Yeah, the question was when James came to the editing room, he had 3 hours of stuff and
Well,
had to
you
lose
always
an hour.
have three. You will always have 3 hours, and it's not anything. What you cut is usually not anything important. It's very, very. It's just stuff that I mean, scenes are longer than they should be, and extra lines you don't need, and so on. I mean, it's nothing important was, and I'm sure. I mean, I know that there was more Shakespeare. That's for sure. There was, I think there's only one scene, only one Shakespeare scene which we used in its entirety, and it's all in one shot, in fact. So all the rest were bits and pieces and stuff. And they themselves had to make huge cuts in the scenes. I mean, the actors, but they were used to doing that. They could cut a Shakespeare scene at the end. I mean, for the film, it sounded wonderful to me. It sounded complete, and it might be only 1/3 of what Shakespeare wrote.
Yes.
You have many wonderful films in your repertoire. Do you have a favorite among them? And if so, which one is it and why?
I don't really have I don't have that much of it. I have favorites, several that I like a lot. I like a film, one of our films that is rather unknown, Mr. and Mrs. Bridge, which is a real favorite of mine.
That's a film that really took you back to where you came
Well,
from.
yeah, exactly. It was the most autobiographical. That one and A Soldier's Daughter Never Cries. The most autobiographical.
Is that someone in the back? Yes? Louder.
I can't hear. I still don't get it.
Yeah, you're saying was there something in any of your films that was a personal experience that came? Maybe you should come down and
Yeah,
speak into the mic, because I can't quite make you out.
Yeah.
Not very loud. No, I was saying I find the process of watching your films, the experience, very beautiful. And I was curious, as you as a creative, something that you value or find beautiful within your own work.
What do you find valuable or beautiful in your own work?
Oh. Well.
That's kind of a big question.
I mean,
That can be personal, and I understand.
I don't know. I mean, that's almost impossible to answer. I mean, I like lots of things in different films, and I just I generally approve of what I've done. I don't have a great deal of criticism of it. Though God knows it's had plenty of criticism, but I'm happy with with what I did on the whole. So, but I couldn't specifically say. When I watch certain scenes in my films, there's a certain mood that I've created. It's a combination of everything. It's the acting, it's the visual sense of it. It could be the music, and I know I have made something that satisfies me. It's art. It's my own art, and it satisfies me. But it may not be all through an entire film. It may only be 2 or 3 scenes or something of the sort. But I'm satisfied with it, and I feel that I've done something with it. But that's a sort of lame answer, because it's a big question, but a lame sort of.
Many filmmakers never look at their films again after they
I
made
don't
them.
understand that.
Yeah, I don't either, but that's what they say.
I don't understand that, and they walk away from them, and they never, like at the wrap, and they're gone.
Yes.
So the opening shot seems very disconnected from the rest. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. But I wondered why you decided on the bicycle and the breakfast in the.
Well, I just saw it. It's one of those things that, you see something happens and you like it and you put it in your film.
Talking about the opening shot.
One day they were those two were riding around on that bike, waiting to act or something like that. And they're all dressed in their 18th century costume. And it was just wonderful, I thought. And so I had the sense to shoot it. I didn't know it was going to be the title sequence, but then it seemed very good.
But it's a wonderful jolt to go from that to them on the train, with their wristwatches and the radio, and so it's almost like you travel through time. And there is a way in which I feel the film kind of exists in a number of different temporal modes. It's Shakespeare. It's and Shakespeare representing a kind of a major element of the British kind of cultural imperialism, exporting that kind of culture. And then there's the modern day where things are taking place. But there's also a sense of a nostalgia for the recent modern day when the British Empire was still grand. The father in particular is often sort of singing, at the end he's singing a very patriotic British song that's completely obsolete, and as so many of their values are obsolete. So there's kind of like 3 different times kind of interweaving in the
that's
film.
one of the things I like about the film, and I realize that very strongly tonight. It's an India that is not there anymore. That India also is gone, in the same way that the British are gone, but that particular moment of that culture in India is also gone.
Have you been back there recently?
I haven't been there since 2006.
And your last...
I went constantly until 2006. Ismail died in 2005, and I went back in 2006, and then I haven't been since.
So your last film that you made in India was Heat and Dust, I think. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, that was my last feature there. Yeah.
Had you a desire to make further films in India, or did you feel like?
Yeah, there were 1 or 2 other things that I thought would be interesting to do, but I then, I got very involved in making films here, or in France, and England, all over the place.
Any last questions before we wrap this up?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it's a comment and question. This is black and white film.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was full of color. The use of lights, the use of the costume, the texture, the change of scenery, the panoramas. It's full of color. The question is, was that your deliberate choice to use animals throughout the movie, especially dogs and monkeys there? Because it's a little touch, that beautiful little touch of those animals.
Well, there's a lot
It's a
of
comment
that.
about the film being in black and white, and yet it seemed to be full of color, and particularly the use of animals like the monkeys. And
Well, the animals wandered along, or they were suddenly there, and we just put them in. That's the sort of thing that you, in fact, gets cut out often in the editing room. I mean, that whole business with the monkey wallah, it's an awfully long, drawn-out thing, and I was thinking, like, my goodness, when did I cut?
well, it's a great kind of like counterpoint. He's in show business as well.
Yeah, true. As I said.
Okay, last question goes to this Jim.
I just want to say, what came across very strongly to me was your tribute to the actors and their dedication. And I mean,
Yes,
What comes through strongly is
yes,
tribute to the actors and their dedication.
yes. Well,
Wasn't really a question.
I couldn't have made this film unless that idea was present. I mean, because we were working with lifelong actors in India.
Okay, well, Fred, that's probably all we should have time for. James Ivory, thank you very much.